Welcome to Pondering Passages. I'm Kurt Austin. My friend David Mullins and I are going to be hammering out some thoughts about Psalm 131. If this is a new psalm to you, maybe one that you're not familiar with, it is really interesting. Only 3 verses, but it's got some great information and really helps us understand more about who God is in our journey to becoming more like Him. So I hope you join us. We're going to take a short musical break. Dave has hummed this entire intro, and so it's pretty impressive work. And we'll see you back here as soon as it's done. Welcome to Pondering Passages. This is Kurt Austin and my friend David Mullins, and we are talking about Psalm 131 this week. Very interesting psalm, some visualization, but also I think, Dave, as I've read through it, a lot of good guidance in how we engage with our own internal thoughts and our heart and God.
Okay. Wow. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
It's only like 5 verses, so it won't be a lot to say, but it'll be interesting.
Now, for some reason, we're able to always fill up, 15 to 20 minutes regardless.
That is true. So look at this. So, Lord, my heart is not proud, my eyes are not haughty. I don't concern myself with matters too great or too awesome for me to grasp. It's
How true is that?
Oh my gosh, it's terribly untrue. Because we spend all of our life trying to figure out the problems of the world.
Yeah. I'm thinking for the psalmist, it was accurate, but as I read through that, this is more aspirational for me.
Yeah.
To not have a proud heart.
Tell me, eyes are not haughty. What does that mean to you?
When I think of that, when I think of someone whose eyes are haughty, it's more like an arrogance, that I feel better than others, almost like an arrogance. What are your thoughts?
I think so. I think it's another way of saying my heart is not proud, my eyes are not. I think it's almost looking down on other people.
Yeah, that's
right?
what I would say. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I do not think you look down on other people. I do not think you have haughty eyes.
Sometimes I do.
Do you really?
Yeah. I might not say it, but sometimes people get caught in different situations or circumstances, and it's like, well, what did you expect? I mean, I think kind of a haughty statement.
True. Yeah, you're all about that. You're right. I'm sorry. I should have taken that back. Oh, I do think you're right. I think it is aspirational.
Yeah.
Right. I think probably even for the psalmist as he's writing this, it probably was really aspirational.
So am I hearing you say that you kind of have a sense that a proud heart and haughty eyes are kind of a human part of the human condition?
Yeah. And it's really rare when you talk to anybody who they may not know, may not be self-aware enough to realize that they're that way, but certainly they are about something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that takes the position of somebody is actually better than you, but because of my heart is so proud that I see them in disdain, right?
Right.
I'm better than you because I don't have all this money that you've wasted on these cars, or and I've used that example before, but
and I don't know, people watching this, I don't mean to offend, but cigarettes.
Do you struggle with that? Is that something you struggle with?
Well,
No, I mean other people smoking.
Well, for a financial reason, because I found out how much it costs. And one person just they could not ever get ahead, and they were smoking like 3 packs of cigarettes a day.
Oh,
and it's like, do you not realize if you stop smoking, it would be like like another job that you'd have? But again, I recognize that there's addictive qualities and stuff, and so sometimes it's not the
Right.
fact that people want that, it's just the fact that, my body craves it and I don't know how to get over it. So you try to have grace. And I do want to push back a little bit because I think there are some folks that do not have proud hearts or haughty eyes. Uh,
Name 2.
I if I thought about it, I think I do know a couple. I do know a couple. I don't want to name them. Do know a couple, and usually they're just very
Sure.
gracious and just very open to people, and so I think it is part of the human condition. But I think there are some folks that, for whatever reason, have been able to operate with grace rather than judgment, and that would be my desire. Uh,
Mhm.
li
Yeah,
like I said, I might not come out and say things. I don't even wanna think them, but I think those are different levels.
yeah. Um, a beautiful character trait to have within you, and I think I can I can honestly say there have been some times where I have lived that way. I
Yeah,
have lived with, a heart that wasn't proud and eyes that were not haughty, but it's more the exception than the rule for me, and it's one of those things where you don't even know you've done it until afterwards, and it's like, "Oh, shoot.
yeah,
That's how I processed that, and
yeah.
that wasn't right."
And what I've said at times is, on my best days, I've been able to do this,
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
you know, not my
yeah.
normal days.
So then then the writer shifts just a little bit. "I don't concern myself with matters too great or too
Yeah,
awesome for me to grasp."
yeah.
Eh, what'd you think about that?
Oh, this is another aspiration. I think to myself, what would it be like to just be okay with how things are? And I don't know if that's exactly what he's saying, but to not concern myself with all these things that really are beyond me, beyond my grasp, my ability to do anything about.
And I think it goes everything. It could be anything from, as small as my day-to-day work,
Yeah.
and as great as the mysteries of the heavens, and certainly the mystery of God's grace. I can't wrap my mind around that, and I've you know, I mean, being a pastor, that there are people who absolutely need to have answers before they can live in the presence of God. I worked with a gentleman. He wanted to. We were on a missions trip together, and they were asking. He and his wife were planning on joining this missions group, and they were going to be a part of this. But he got really hung up on the organization's view of hell,
Mm,
their theological take on hell, and it. I mean, he had already they'd already started packing up. They'd already got going, and then he was ready to pull the trigger. He was ready to pull out entirely because they thought one thing about hell and he thought another thing about hell, and that was a deal breaker for him.
mm. Wow.
And they had to
Well,
have some serious ongoing conversations about that. But the thing was, it wasn't like this group thought there was no hell and he thought that everyone should be in hell. It wasn't that dramatic. I mean, it was just
yeah.
it was minuscule
Mm.
in the differences, in my estimation. I as I listened to the conversation.
So it wasn't that they believed he'd be there and he believed he wouldn't be?
He believed that they should be telling every lost soul that they were going to hell if they didn't
Okay.
accept Jesus. And they didn't feel that that was the starting point for any conversation. And if you weren't willing to tell them they're going to hell, I don't know if I can be a part of this part
Mm.
of this ministry. And that's a fascinating thing. But
Yeah,
I mean, boy, it escalated up, and
yeah.
um, I don't get that way.
And well, see, and here's the thing, if there are concerns that I have with matters that are too great or awesome for me to grasp, kind of like, what you're talking about.
Hmm.
And then I think, what would it be like if I could let go and just be okay with what God what
Right,
I see and
right.
what I read, and not try to grasp these great and awesome things that are far beyond me. I think, maybe, what would it be like to have a simpler faith? Uh,
Oh, absolutely. To this, which is exactly what Jesus says, right? Faith
yeah,
like a child.
childlike faith.
Ooh, which then we takes us into
Oh, there
verse
we
2.
go.
The psalmist then says,
See
"Instead,
what
I
you did
calmed."
there.
I didn't even mean to. I calmed and quieted myself like a weaned child who no
Yeah,
longer cries for its mother's milk.
yeah.
Yes, like a weaned child is my soul within me.
Yes.
I've
Like a
loved
weaned
this.
child.
This has been
Yeah.
my verse. Dave and I, for those of you listening, Dave and I, we don't always do this every week. Sometimes we miss a week because of vacation, or Dave got lost in the woods last week. So
Well, we did have it planned out, but then schedules changed.
yes, and so calm myself. So I have loved this verse from the first time I read it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I can't think of any place else in the Bible, and you're a Bible student that is closer to scholar than student. I have calmed and quieted myself. Is that anywhere else in the Bible?
Not that I can think of.
I can't think of any place else, any other
Yeah.
story. Um, and I really just that. But then what I did was I tried to kind of spend time on the backside of that where he talks about like a weaned child, and then move back up to the front side of that to kind of put that into a context, this anxiety, this
Mm,
concern, this proud and haughty, all of these things are basically, I think, if I understood it right, verse 1 is listing things that are not what God wants for us. It agitates our soul.
yeah,
It puts us in a place where we are not at ease. We are at unease about all of these things. Whereas the psalmist then says, I don't do any of those things. Instead, this is what I have
yeah,
learned. I mean, because he doesn't say, I calm myself, I quiet myself. I calmed and quieted myself. This is something I have done to put me in a different place. Um, which makes me think at some point he did have a proud heart. He did have haughty eyes. He did concern himself with matters too great. He did uh, think on things that were too awesome to grasp. But now he's been able to take that shift.
yeah, yeah, I like that.
I
Yeah,
loved it.
because yeah, that is a shift. And you're right, when I concern myself with all these matters too great for me or awesome for me, it does bring it agitation in my soul.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I hadn't noticed the well, maybe I had, but I hadn't really focused on I have calmed and quieted myself. This is
Yes.
something he's doing intentionally.
Hmm.
And when I think about that, I wonder, well, what practices did he use to calm and quiet himself?
Yeah.
Now, I know some practices that I use to calm and quiet myself, and I'm learning that those practices, I usually do them in the morning, but I am finding that if I can remember to practice them throughout the day, it brings a calm and quiet to other times in my day.
Well, let's be practical for a minute then. What are some of the steps that you take to calm and quiet yourself? What are some things you do as part of your practice?
Well, one of my practices is spend some time in silence and solitude. Of course, if you're going to spend time in silence, a lot of times you have to be in solitude because other people talk, and they breathe loudly. No,
Bang
but
dishes around things.
yeah, yeah, but especially silence to just breathe. And there's a breath prayer called the Jesus prayer. Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner, or even Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me. Some people use just the name of Jesus. They breathe in, Jesus, and then breathe out us, Jesus. And it's just something to keep coming back to and letting go of everything else. And I think it's that letting go of. And I have
Mhm.
found even 2 minutes, intentionally 2 minutes throughout the day at different points, uh, can be restorative. But what I find is sometimes I'm so agitated during the day that I spend that time not quieted and calming myself, but rather my mind is thinking of all the stuff that's coming up. So it's a practice,
Yeah.
and it's something that at first it seems very foreign and very difficult, and like it's not making any difference whatsoever. But over time, just like lifting weights or exercising, over time you begin to see changes and see things different. And so this is, helpful for me today as I'm trying to incorporate these practices throughout the day rather than just in the morning. Spending some time reading scripture can do it as well. I mean, there's a lot of things. It's about stepping back and just creating space and just say, God, I'm inviting you into this space. You know,
Mhm. I've been trying, what's the book that you and have been reading? I'm sure you finished yours a long time ago. I'm not quite done. About mindfulness.
uh,
Um, I got it on my ebook, so I don't have it in front of me.
just recent.
Yeah.
Are you
It's
talking
the
about
mo
positive intelligence?
Yes, positive intelligence.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the mindfulness, that idea of mindfulness, the thing that has stuck with me on that so far, and I haven't progressed in the book at all because I'm still practicing this one thing, is that uh, to eat mindfully.
Mm,
And so one of the
yeah.
ways that I've been trying to calm myself, quiet myself, is when I eat, rather than wolfing down, eating as fast as I can, when I remember to, what I've been trying to do is take a bite and to mindfully think about what the flavors are. What are the textures? Is it heat or is it sweet? Is it sour? Is it crunchy? Is it soft? And really just mindful. And it's not focusing on Jesus, but is certainly focusing on that moment's experience. And the goal then for me, as I'm trying to quiet myself just in the meal, is to allow myself to practice that so that I see it in other places. If I'm on a walk, what am I paying attention to? What about the wildflowers or the path itself? How does it feel under my feet? Um, it's really so so this
Intelligence, yeah.
positive
Yeah,
intelligence.
and it's not a Christian book, but you can transform any of these practices
Yeah,
into, I think, the spiritual practice.
yeah.
Kurt, as you're eating and you're thinking about the flavors and stuff, you can give God thanks
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
that He has created you in a way that you can actually enjoy these flavors, and it can
yeah.
actually turn into a time of praise or maybe even worship. That we are fearfully and wonderfully made, from Psalm 139. uh, by the way, a psalm that's coming up in a few weeks. Um, but, uh, but yeah, so, you don't just focus on the things, you pull Jesus into that time
Mhm.
as well. And I think it will calm and quiet, and it probably is also a way to, uh, cultivate non-proudness and non-haughtiness into our lives as well.
I agree. I think, it's rather than just, moving forward in the experience of the day, you
Mm,
actually are kind of, taking stock of what is happening, not in a, concerning myself for matters too great way, but in fact of removing yourself from the activities, stepping outside of those activities so that you're able to observe them without that full engagement. And I love the second part of verse 2 that he goes on to talking about this like a weaned child who no
yeah.
longer cries for its mother's milk, because what it made me think as I read that is what he's describing is no longer this is no longer a baby's reaction.
Mm,
This is someone who is growing up beyond that, little bird in the nest, the mother flies up and and they just open their mouths,
yeah,
"Feed me, feed me, feed me."
yeah.
But in fact, having some why is the child no longer crying? Because the mother's not reliable or not the one dependent on feeding the child. The child is now able to take in sustenance on his own.
Yeah.
Um, he may be eating more solids or whatever, so that he's actually able to process the world in a different way that is not solely dependent on that person to give him the answers, but he's growing up. Which I think goes back to the fact that I'm responsible for calming myself. I'm responsible for quieting, or I'm taking responsibility for
Well,
that.
I I'm not sure that there's anyone else who can.
We are responsible for our own reactions
Yeah,
to
and
life's
we can ask God to calm us and quiet
Yeah.
us, but if we're going to allow our minds to continue to race,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're going to be sabotaging ourselves.
You've got this great technique now after all of your years of training to be a coach is, just asking people what would benefit you.
Yeah,
What would be what is it you need to get this done, and how do you get there,
yeah,
right? And so we're not dependent on somebody else to fix that for us. It's
yeah,
us acknowledging what's the issue, and how do we get from point A to point B? What's my
yeah.
responsibility in that
I
role?
I realize, and this is very humbling. God has given me all the tools I need to do all the work He's called me to, and to deal with the life where I find myself.
So why
I
do you
might
keep
not
going
use
for more training? What's
well,
the
see,
deal?
I might not use those tools. I might choose not to, but He has given me really at every point, everything that I need to find that life abundant. But as Paul says in Philippians, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it's God who is at work in you, both to will and to act for His good pleasure. So we work because He's working. Well, because He's working, we're able to do these things,
Yeah.
but we have to
And so
choose to do it.
the writer of this psalm ends with that admonition.
Yeah,
Exactly that, right?
yeah,
Here's where I start, here's where I currently am, and here's how I got there. How? Because of my own strength? Absolutely
no,
not.
no.
Oh, Israel, put your hope in the Lord now and always, because that's where it's
Now,
going to take you. Yep.
now, and always.
That's so
Yes,
good. This was
yes,
such
I
a
love
great.
it.
I really like this song. Now I'm like you. At first, I wasn't a big fan because it was like this is really weird imagery. I cannot figure out how verse 1 ties to verse 2
Yeah,
ties to verse 3. But then, the more I read it again, the more I read it, the more it came alive.
yeah,
And
like the hills.
we used to sing in youth group. We go, "The hills are alive, and they're gonna get you."
That's a different movie.
Yeah,
The
that was
hills
a
have the eyes.
so I think this is an absolutely fantastic psalm
It
to
is.
ponder, and
Yes.
especially in a time that has been filled with upheaval,
Yeah.
filled with turmoil, filled with people trying to figure it out. What if happens if we just take our hands off of it,
Yeah. Now,
calm ourselves?
I want the medical science folks to continue to take a look at it. And again, I don't think this is saying we don't try to understand, or we don't try it, like medical
No, you're
science and
right.
stuff like this. I,
Mhm.
I think I think it's helping us to find that place where God has called us. It's matters too great or awesome for me to grasp. And so if you have training in certain areas, yeah, grasp those things because God is giving you that ability to think through those things. But it's just frustrating if you don't have that and you're
Well,
trying to.
you and I were talking about before we jumped on this. We were talking about repairs in my house, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, that's a good, yeah. No,
we were actually using this where I was
yeah,
asking about how do I run a LAN cord from my modem up to my and as we talked about it, we talked about 38 different ways
yeah,
we could do that. Cutting a hole in the wall, drilling through the floor. What could we
yeah,
do? And I realized, wait a minute, I've got an electrician coming. That guy does not have to think about that
yeah,
because that's not bigger for him. But for me, it's
yeah,
way outside my scope.
yeah, yeah,
I keep
yeah.
tapping my pen. I'm sorry about that.
Well,
I don't
just
know why
don't
I'm
let
so
it happen again.
jazzed. I'm just so jazzed by
You're
this.
jazzed,
Jazzed by this.
jazzed,
Hey, so if you
jazz
are
hands,
one of the if you were one of the two
jazz
or three
hands, man.
people, this is gonna.
Okay.
I can't work under these conditions. If you are one of the 2 or 3 people who follow us on YouTube, actually we're up to 24 followers on YouTube. Very
Yeah.
exciting. We've got a couple hundred followers on Facebook and Instagram. We've got people that are listening to our podcast. If you've looked at ponderingpassages.com, then you'll see that we have blog posts there. And if you want to be a part of the conversation and you've not checked the like button, the follow button, the interested button, or left a comment, now's the time. Feel free to do that. We'd love to hear from you.
Now and always.
Also, now, now and always. And so we would love for you to be a part of that community as we are thinking about what the Psalms have to say to us. We started with Psalm 69. We're at 131. Next time we'll be 132. Can you do the math?
No, I don't want to do the math.
It's crazy how much we've done. And we are looking forward to hearing from you, to making you a part of that community, and so glad that you have followed us today. So enjoy this passage. We will see you back here when we do 132. A lot more verses, but really good stuff. I peeked at it. I know. So we will see you then. In the meantime, God bless. It was two couples actually came on, and he said, we're in 31, 32. You're in our seats, not to us, to this couple behind us. And they were like, no, ours has 31, 32, and theirs did. And he said, check your dates. And so they were a day early. They had and so they went, oh my gosh, we're a day early. Well, at least we'll be here tomorrow. I guess we'll just come back and we'll do something different today. And so they got off. They were all embarrassed. And I told them as they were leaving, I said, do not feel bad. I said, 2 years ago, my wife and I were down in Nashville, and we went to the Grand Ole Opry, and nobody else was in the parking lot. It was kind of weird. And we scanned our ticket to get into the parking area that I'd paid extra for, and it wouldn't let us in. And it said invalid date. We looked, we'd missed it. It was the day before. So it was just me and Anita in the grand, no show. There was nothing going on that night. And I said, so at least you get to come back. And to make matters worse, I didn't tell them this, but to make matters worse, I still get emails from the Grand Ole Opry waiting for me to come back. They're so excited for us to return. Like, no.
Oh my goodness. And then there was that time you went to that funeral. And